Good evening all, and welcome. And tonight we conclude Paranormal Week with a chilling collection of demon stories. I also have the pleasure of being joined by Creepy Oz, who has narrated a handful of tonight's stories as well. But for now, it's time to get comfortable and let the darkness take control. My name is Radley. I'm a woman in my 30s now, and over the years I've had many experiences I could not explain. These experiences started at age 5 and have continued to happen to me through adulthood. They have not happened daily, but consistently have happened at different stages in my life. What I'm about to tell you is one of the strangest, most difficult to comprehend accounts of what I experienced when I was on the cusp of adulthood. It was a turning point for me because afterwards, I would have to grapple with the realization that my experiences could no longer be disregarded as isolated cases, and that whatever was happening to me was also affecting those I loved. It was the summer of the mid-2000s, and I was at a crossroad in my life. At that age, I was taking a summer night course at the community college. I was also dealing with the beginnings of an illness that would become a bigger problem as I matured. But in the early days, I tried to preserve as best I could and disregard my growing symptoms as a result of stress from school and graduation, a fear of the future. Because of my health issues, I could not drive, so my mum had to drive me to and from classes. I took this summer course because it coincided with my mum's daily schedule on those days with my younger brother, and gave her ample time to get summer activities and whatever else done during the day before picking me up around 9 p.m. The workload was stressful, and I thought I wasn't doing well because of the accelerated pace, but I'm pretty sure I wasn't doing well because of the way my brain was changing and my memory and retention and eyesight were being affected. I often had headaches, and my energy levels were extremely low. But I convinced myself I was just stressed out. In addition to my night class, I was also taking 2 other classes during the day. Stress. It was stressful. Well, after this experience, I was way more stressed out. One night after my class ended, I made my way up from the basement, where the class was held. It was creepy walking through the empty hallway, but I wasn't really scared, just kind of spooked by the silence. I knew the staff was around somewhere, and even though I felt alone, I knew I wasn't. I made my way to the lobby, and out the back of the building to an outdoor patio where I would wait for my mum and brother to collect me. The patio was connected to the parking garage by a bridge, and the bridge was lit by a bright light. I had never felt unsafe or scared sitting out there, and that night, I wasn't feeling scared or thinking about anything other than all the work I had to do over the weekend. I suddenly heard my brother's voice call my name. Rad. Normally my mum and brother would get out of the car, walk through the garage over the bridge, and I'd walk back to the car with them. But I didn't see or hear my mum. I looked towards the garage but saw no one. No one was around me. I was the only one on the patio, but I clearly heard my brother's voice. He sounded excited, which was no surprise. Despite our age gap, we've always been good friends, and he would always bound towards me as they picked me up. But tonight, I only heard his voice. I responded with, "Yeah, I'm here. Where are you?" Again, he called me. So I got up, gathered my books and backpack, and started walking towards the bridge. As I walked, I again called out, "Where are you guys?" He answered back, "Rad, I'm over here. Are you coming?" It sounded like his voice was coming from behind me now. I turned around and saw nothing but the automatic doors leading into the college and the lobby beyond. Perplexed, I called out again. Then his voice sounded like it was coming from the side, but to the side was just an empty office building with no lights. I stopped walking and started to feel strange, thinking something wasn't right. I felt like something was off. Again I called for a final time, "Where are you? I don't see you." Then his voice clearly came from the garage, but now it almost had an echo. We're in here, Rad. Are you coming? I started slowly walking over the bridge, and the closer I got, the heavier I felt. I felt this growing heaviness was enveloping me. I stopped. I was scared. I was scared and didn't know why. Suddenly, fight or flight kicked in and I turned and went sprinting back across the patio to the safety of the lobby inside. Once inside, I immediately called my mum. Before she could even say hello, I anxiously blurted out, "Where are you? Are you guys out in the garage?" Then, I heard a noise and clearly knew she was driving. She responded, "No, I'm sorry I didn't call you. We're running late. I dropped your brother's friend off on the way and we're just leaving, so it'll be a little while. Sit in the lobby and I'll call you when we get there." My heart started to race and I broke out in a cold sweat. My head was pounding and I felt like I was going to pass out. I ended the call and sat down in the lobby. There were people around, but I felt completely alone and confused by what I just experienced and racked my brain for some logical explanation. I knew I was stressed out about school. I knew I had been having trouble sleeping. I knew my headaches were getting worse. Maybe this was just a brain mix-up caused by stress. That had to be it. But I'd clearly heard my little brother's voice. No, I pushed the thoughts away and decided I was either going crazy and hearing voices, or I was stressed out about grades and was not crazy. Over the next few weeks, I would try my best to forget what had happened to me. I continued to study hard and disregard any memory of what I experienced that night, but would find myself over-analyzing every detail at night before bed. I wanted a solid answer. This all weighed heavily on me, and as time passed, my mind began to go down some very dark paths. I began to feel like maybe I was going insane and needed help, but was too scared to tell anyone because of the repercussions. My mind was a mess. About 3 weeks later, something happened that would change my entire mindset and change the way I felt about everything. One night, my brother and I were outside on the trampoline. My brother was 8 at the time. Like I said, we've always been close, and over the years he's told me things about himself that he hasn't told others. On that night, we'd be jumping, and we were just sitting on the trampoline, talking and laughing about his upcoming week of summer camp, when suddenly, without warning, his expression turned serious, and then immediately there was a fearful yet quizzical look. He looked right at me and asked in a small voice, "Rad, why do you talk to me when you're at school, and how do you do that?" I couldn't speak. I could barely breathe. My head started pounding as I searched for the right words to answer him when he studied my face closely. He wanted an answer. I finally managed a slightly loud but squeaky-faced, "What?" "Yeah, when you're away at school you sometimes talk to me. How do you do that?" My words wouldn't come. I was so fearful and wanted to cry, but I knew I wouldn't break down in front of my 8-year-old brother. I gathered myself and slowly said, "What do you mean?" He continued studying me and went on to explain, "Well, I hear you talking to me, but you're not here. You're away at school." I sat for a long while, just staring out at the backyard. I couldn't lose it, and I couldn't react the way I wanted to. I had to pull myself together. "What do I say?" I finally asked. He looked at me in a very trusting way and began. He told me several experiences, but the two that stuck out to me and stayed with me are the ones I will reveal. He said he was playing in the basement one day. Our basement is fully finished and big, so my siblings and I all had bedrooms downstairs. Our older sister had a bedroom right off the living room with the basement steps and a crawl space separating her bedroom from the hallway that led down to mine and my brother's rooms. He said he had been playing and was just about to go upstairs. As he was about to cross the threshold of the doorway to go upstairs, he heard me whisper loudly, "Johnny, come here." He stopped and called out, "Where are you?" He said it sounded like I was in our sister's room, and I responded in the same whisper, "I'm in here. Come here." I watched his face and could tell he was serious, and he clearly was scared to tell me this. So I tried to stay quiet and composed as I asked, What did you do? He told me he was scared, so he just ran upstairs really fast. Then he told me about the time he was building his fort out in our woods behind our shed, when suddenly I said, "Hi, Johnny. What are you doing?" He answered and told me he was building a fort, and then asked what I was doing. He said I responded by telling him that I was at school, and that I went on to tell him about my class. I know little children have active imaginations, and I know some kids like to make up stories. But his account left me reeling, and my brother had never been one to make things up to scare him or other people. He is one of the kindest people I know, and even then, at age 8, I didn't doubt him. His face was confused, and this was a memory of his that he could not make sense of, and he was looking for an explanation. I pulled him in close and hugged him. I didn't really know what to say. I said what I could out of honesty. "That's not me, Johnny. I don't know what you heard, but it's not me. That's not logical. The only way I can talk to you is when I'm here or over the phone. It wasn't me." I told him not to talk to whatever voice sounded like me unless he could make absolutely sure that I was the one talking. He agreed, and then we prayed together. I didn't tell him about my experience until he was older, and over the years we would both have more of these experiences. The things we saw, felt, heard, experienced was sometimes different and sometimes similar, but it would touch both of our lives in profound ways, and we'd always come back to that shared experience and wonder what it meant. My brother and I have a bond that we don't share with our older sister. She grew up with us, but she's never really had any spooky or unexplainable things happen to her, and sometimes looks at me strangely when I tell her about the stuff I suffered growing up because of all of these happenings. I used to envy her a bit. I'd wonder what it felt like to be blissfully unaware and boring but normal. I envied that peace. Now that I'm an adult, those experiences have ended. But they ended completely in a dramatic way just recently. I believe in God, so I believe in angels, and I definitely believe in demons. Because of the nature of many experiences, I choose to believe they were demonic oppression. Now the oppression is gone, and there's no more desperate wondering about why they happened or if they will happen again. I'm no longer conflicted and fearful, and I know I'm definitely not insane. I'm free. Thank you for listening to my story. When my grandma died, she told my mum that Satan told her, "I could get you, but I'm gonna get your kids." I remember always being terrified growing up of Satan getting me, so I tried to do everything right. Growing up, my family constantly had crazy paranormal experiences. We had to get blessings on the house multiple times. I remember thinking this was normal for everyone, until I married my husband, and he said he had never had a single, even slightly paranormal experience until he met me. We were raised in a strict religious Latter-day Saints household, and we read our scriptures every night, and when I was of age, I attended baptisms for the dead. I thought I was doing everything in my power to ward off evil spirits, until one day, something my sister said made me question everything. She told me that every time she read her scriptures, she would have sleep paralysis. She saw really scary things and would even feel a man pushing on her chest. She said she never had sleep paralysis when she didn't read her scriptures, so it made her not want to read them. I was at a complete loss for words because I wouldn't want to read my scriptures either. My mum just told us that the closer to God you are, the more Satan attacks you. This was terrifying to hear. There were so many scary experiences involving seeing things, hearing things, and even my sister's room being destroyed. My most personal haunted experience of my entire life was at my grandma and grandpa's house, who are extreme Mormons. I was asleep in the upstairs room, and I heard someone running around my room. It was literally the middle of the night, and it went on for what felt like forever. When I finally got the courage to get out and run, I ran to my parents' room and grabbed my mum's phone so I could turn on my hymns and try to get rid of evil spirits. I was so confused how I could have a haunted experience in my grandparents' house because they were so devout. I thought there was no way bad spirits could get to them. I thought it must be because I'm being such an unclean thing in the house that I brought the bad spirits. My grandparents have a condo, and one time my dad and I went to stay there, and we got there late at night. The back door was wide open, which was weird because no one had stayed there in weeks. We checked the rooms, and when we went into the bathroom, we made eye contact in the mirror, and half his face was completely dropped down. It looked like it was melting off, and I ran into my room and locked the door. My dad ran after me and said that it was okay. He saw it too, and that what we needed to do was simply do a blessing on the house. When I met my husband, we got married in the temple, and he began to have his own personal paranormal experiences. We saw the shadow of a devil head on several occasions. One time he thought I was trying to scare him by crawling around the room, and even saw me crawling in the hallway only to discover I was in the bath. One night we were at his parents' house and heard someone clear as day walking and jumping on the roof. He and his dad went outside, only to discover nothing was there. I told my parents the next day, and they said the same thing happened to them that night, and they had to check the attic because they clearly heard someone walking and jumping around. When I became pregnant with my first daughter, I became extremely susceptible to bad spirits. If I even accidentally saw a scary video while scrolling on my phone, I would have either a nightmare or a scary experience. One night, I had the most horrendous thing happen. Most of the time when I'm dreaming, I'm completely aware it's a dream, and I know that if something scary is about to happen, I just need to go to sleep in my dream and I'll wake up in the real world. This particular night, I had such a terrifying dream where there was something scary in the room, so I immediately knew I needed to go to sleep. I woke up in my old house sitting next to my sister, and she pointed to the end of the bed, and there was a dark figure sitting there. I freaked out and tried to sleep again, but I woke up in my grandparents' condo with dark figures lurking in the corners. I kept waking up in new terrifying rooms I had previously lived in with dark figures over and over again for what felt like forever. I had no idea what timeline I was trying to get to, but I genuinely thought I was in hell. When I finally woke up next to my husband, I was screaming and crying hysterically. I have never cried harder in all my life. I was traumatized to go back to sleep after that, and I truly have no words for how horrific that was. I slept with my garments on, and was then so terrified to ever sleep without them. Growing up in Latter-day Saints, we have always heard that Satan works hardest on the people who are closest to God. He doesn't mess with you when you aren't following the teachings of the church, because he has you exactly where he wants you. Since my husband and I have completely left the church, we have hardly ever had any scary experiences. I saw a comment on a social media post that said, when you do baptisms for the dead, you are baptizing them by proxy, which means you are inviting them to go to you and be baptized. I am now spiraling that I literally invited random spirits to inhabit my body. I never knew the people I did baptisms for the dead for, and what if they were an evil child abuser or some Satan worshipper? It makes me wonder what other parts of the church are more satanic than godly, like the symbol on the garments. What else do I not know? I am terrified, but also relieved to not be burdened by the constant battle of spirit and flesh. I wanted to share this because these experiences have severely traumatized me. And has anyone else had similar experiences with religion, or have had any speculation as to why this is? I was doing a job in Starksville, Mississippi. Me and my buddy decided to go and see where Robert Jackson supposedly sold his soul to the devil. So we went to Clarksdale, where the coordinates were supposed to be. We arrived at this gas station at around 5 p.m, and it looked like it was about to fall apart. It was dilapidated and you'd expect it to be abandoned. We walked in, only to be greeted by this beautiful girl standing there and asking if we had reservations. I said no, she said no problem, and that we always have room. We walked in and it looked like a place from the 1950s, nothing but beautiful people inside, and the cooks were even wearing all white with their white paper hats. It was like stepping into another era. We sat down, they brought us bread and RC cola, not Coke, but RC. We're talking and placing our orders while eating bread as we wait. Not once was our bread basket empty, and not one time did I need a refill. But no one had come by to serve us. We looked at our watches and my buddy said, "Dude, we've been here for 2 hours, but it's felt like 5 minutes." I told him, "Let's get out of here." So we got up and 2 large men asked us where we were going. We said we were just stepping outside for some air. We walked out and there were no cars at all, only our truck. I looked around the building and there were no cars outside, yet the place was full on the inside. So we left in a hurry, threw the GPS back to our hotel and drove for an hour in silence. Only for my buddy to say, "Oh my God, it's taken us in a circle all the way back to the place we just left." We put the truck in a straight line and hauled it out. To this day, it sticks with me. That was almost 20 years ago, and I wonder if we had been hoodwinked by some demon. Has anyone else ever experienced anything like this?
I live in Perth, Western Australia. The house I am currently living in is fairly old, but I wouldn't call it very old or ancient or anything like that. I've lived here since I was in grade 2, 5 or 6 years old, and now I'm 20. Before my family and I moved in, Mum would be very wary of setting foot in the place and would mention that the first owner of the house had something terrible happen to them. She would not elaborate any further on that. Both my mother and myself have sensed strange things on numerous occasions, and both of us have what you may call psychic abilities to some extent, depending on how you choose to look at it. Both her and I have been able to sense the paranormal for as long as I can remember, and her side of the family is particularly sensitive to it. Over the past few years, I have experienced the ominous feeling of being watched in my own house by something that I cannot visually detect, at least most of the time. I know it's there because I can strongly sense it, and I have been seeing it for fleeting seconds every now and then. One night, some months ago, I woke up because my room had grown cold. I usually leave my bedroom door closed unless it's too hot, or I just want a bit of light to filter through from the kitchen, since we always leave the kitchen light on at nighttime. Suddenly wide awake, with an unusual fear sweeping over me, my eyes darted to the doorway. My bed rests against the wall on the left side, so I always have a clear view of my door when I sleep. I noticed that my door was wide open, and I did not remember leaving it open that night. My mum was fast asleep, and my sister was staying at her dad's place for that night. To my horror, I saw a small figure watching me from the entrance of my room. It looked like a dense shadow. That's the best I can explain it. It was slightly propping itself up on one elbow. I called out my little sister's name, thinking that it was probably her. Then, suddenly, it darted up to my bedside table in the blink of an eye and moved very close to my face. Terrified, I found myself staring into a face with no discernible nose or eyes, gaping wide mouth. Where its eyes were meant to be were just dark holes from what I can remember. I froze in horror. Moments passed, and this thing, just me and it in the room, gazes transfixed at me. Eventually, I was able to snap out of this frozen state my body had entered, and I flailed and kicked at the thing, until eventually it dissipated with this blood-curdling noise. It reminded me of like an anguished scream of some sort. I heard it loud and deep within my head, if that makes any sense. It made my hair stand on end and my heart beat alarmingly fast. To this day, I have no real idea what it was. A demon of some sort. I don't know what it wanted. It was terrifying, and every so often, I catch glimpses of shadow-like things / creatures from my peripheral vision. I have heard many a tale about these beings, but even so, I can't help but wonder if they are meant to be good or bad, or somewhere in between. Many times I've awoken from sleep from someone calling my name, and it does usually sound like a man or someone who sounds a lot like me, even when I'm not asleep. Last night, I was sitting at my laptop doing a virus scan when I felt the hair on the back of my neck prickle, and a very distinct hand placed itself on my neck. I felt the palms and the fingers and everything. Even though the air around me was suddenly freezing, the hand on my neck felt strangely warm. I couldn't figure out if this touch was malevolent or benevolent in nature, but it scared the crap out of me. I can't tell if whatever it is trying to communicate with me or hunting me.
Last night at around 10:30 p.m, after going out together, my girlfriend and I walked back to the car which was parked in a small alleyway behind a tattoo parlor. Prior to this, we had a little argument, and we were just talking things out. But as we turned into the alley, everything suddenly went quiet. At the end of the street, there was a female figure standing with her back towards us. She was quite tall and slim, and she was holding a stick up in the air above her head and twirling it around silently. As soon as I saw her, my heart started beating fast, like I was being chased or something, and I just felt uneasy. She looked quite well kept, but she had no shoes on and her hair was all fluffy. She was also twirling around and kind of walking more towards the end of the street. But the weird thing was, she was standing with her back to us, and then after she would twirl around the other way, it was somehow also the back of her. The whole thing just felt very uncanny, and my girlfriend and I were both really scared. Another thing that was unusual was the woman looked almost like a cartoonish, perfect, blacked-out figure, and even though there was a streetlight at the end of the alley close to where she was standing, she also appeared as a black figure. At that moment, it just felt like the whole world went silent, and after discussing what happened, my girlfriend and I both felt the same. After slowing down for a second, we both ran to the car, which was parked halfway down the alley towards the woman. As we were rushing to the car, we were both talking and struggling to unlock the doors, and as you would assume, that would spark a reaction from the woman if she were possibly under the influence of drugs or alcohol or something like that. But she didn't even turn. She just kept twirling around and holding the stick in the air. The same thing when we finally got in the car and the headlights came on, which were extremely bright and facing the woman. She had no reaction whatsoever. When the lights shined on her, I saw that she was wearing a bright red dress, and it just kind of fit her in a weird and uncanny way. It didn't look like the right size. It was tight on her because she was quite thin, but it stopped at an awkward length around her knees. The main thing that had me wondering if it was a demonic encounter is how I felt in that moment and how I continued to feel. As soon as we drove away in the car, my heart was pounding and I still felt nauseous and I started crying. I felt really drained of all my energy, and even when my girlfriend was speaking to me, I couldn't reply, and all my thoughts stopped, and all I could do was feel how terrified I was. It's kind of hard to describe exactly how I felt. I just know I've never felt that way in my life. The entire drive home, I didn't really say anything, and it almost felt like my soul had exited my body. When I parted ways with my girlfriend and went inside, I felt the same, sort of lifeless. My sister saw me and asked what was wrong, and I wanted to start explaining it to her, and I just started bawling my eyes out. After I told her what happened, I felt really sick and drained. I had a lot of trouble sleeping that evening, even with the Quran playing. I had a bad dream that I relived the moment I woke up in a sweat. I had a lot of trouble sleeping that night. To anyone who has any advice or input, I would really appreciate it.
I had been working late on my computer. It was close to about 3 a.m. when I finished. About 5 minutes later, I heard a knock on the door and, thinking, who is this? I got up to open it. What I saw shocked me in a way that I will never forget. It was my friend Mike. Now, the reason this shocked me is that Mike had gone missing over 10 years ago and was presumed to be dead. And now, he was standing here on my doorstep. Before I could say a word, he walked in and sat down on the couch. Just when I got my mind right again, I started to feel anger. So I started yelling at him. Man, 10 years and you turn up on my doorstep. We all thought you were dead. Then, after saying that, he just turned to me and laughed, saying, "Maybe I am." I asked him what the hell that means. He laughed again and said he was joking. Calming down a bit, I finally got a good look at him. That's when I realized he had not aged a day since the last time I saw him. I then asked, where have you been all these years? He did not answer me. He just stared and smiled, and then slowly, he got up and walked over to me. He stared at me and said, "I've been in hell, man." Again, he laughed as if it was just some funny joke. After that, he started to walk back into the lounge room, so I grabbed him on the shoulder and my hand burned like it was touching a hot plate. That's when I knew that what I was dealing with was not human anymore. Trying to not alarm it, I just tried to play along, trying to find out what it wanted and why it took the form of my best friend from years ago. So, I asked it why, after all this time, you decide to show up. He turned and stared again, saying, "I have some things to take care of." He then just looked at me again, with a sly smile on his face, like he knew something I did not. Then, trying to bait it a bit, which I know now is a bad idea, I said we should call his parents. He just turned calmly and said, "If you try, I'll kill you where you stand." This is when I truly knew that this was not him, but some kind of demon. I said to it, "I know what you are." It just laughed and said, "Really? What am I then?" The eyes changed at that point, a colour of black, darker than I've ever seen before. He walked over to me, grabbed me by the neck, and picked me up like I was a 2-year-old child. He threw me into the chair behind me. He looked at me and he said, calmly, "Do you want to know what really happened to Mike?" He then told me that Mike was dead 2 weeks after he went missing, and that he was the demon that took him. It vanished into a cloud of smoke, and in the weeks since, I have not seen this imposter again. But I'm left with a curse of my own. The knowledge that these things exist. The knowledge that this thing is still out there. And the knowledge that at any moment, it could come back for me.
I had a negative attachment that came to me through a friend who had lived with it since childhood, and it stayed with me for about 3 years before leaving with my friend again after we reconnected. The entity made it clear that it was male and that its name started with a T, but it would not say anything more specific. I could never get a straight answer from it through a spirit box or by channeling, since I have some weaker empathetic medium-like abilities. I can sense energy and sometimes get brief flashes of relevant imagery that do not feel like my own thoughts. I tried to banish it, cleanse my home, but none of it worked. The boundaries actually seemed to make it worse. It also affected my emotions. It made me horribly depressed, and that was one of the hardest parts of dealing with it day to day. The reason I'm sharing it is that I'm trying to figure out what it actually was. I'm almost completely certain it was a demon, but I'm curious whether someone might be able to identify which kind. I looked into it myself, but most of what I found pointed to something like a parasitic attachment or energy vampire, and neither of these descriptions matched what I experienced.
My earliest memory of the paranormal was when I was about 5 years old. My sister, who was 6 at the time, and myself were travelling up to Darwin for a couple of days with my dad. We ended up staying in a hotel halfway through our journey. I remember this hotel very vividly. It was quite old, and it had an awful feel to it. My sister and I shared a room. They were bunk beds and I was on the top. Being very young, I fell asleep quite easily. But I got woken up by the sound of my sister's voice. She was saying, "Go away, go away. I'm scared of you." I turned over, trying to see who she was talking to. This is going to sound very strange, and I can still hardly believe it myself, but at our window was this thing. Picture a cross between a gargoyle and an imp. It was sitting at our windowsill, staring down at my sister. And she was standing at the window, staring right back up at it. It licked the window with a massive tongue, and it then pointed to her. That was it for me. I jumped down from my bed, grabbed my sister, and ran into my dad's room. This story took many years for my sister and I to actually talk about. I was about 12, swapping stories when she brought this up. I spent years thinking that this was just one strange dream or twisted memory. But I think I should mention, it was not the last time we saw it. It followed us around for years.
A while back, I was at the Charleston Old City Jail as a security guard for a wedding. I'm a South Carolina local, so I already knew the place had a bad reputation. Even before I got there, everyone discussed how it was one of the most haunted sites in the state. I'd always been interested in the paranormal, so I wasn't exactly walking in with a skeptical mindset. Well, during the event, I was using an app that was supposed to help communicate with spirits. Now, I know how that sounds, but I was curious, and I figured if anything was active there, the app might pick it up. Well, at first there were a few names that responded that didn't seem threatening. Bram and Iris kept coming through, and they felt different from the rest. Not friendly exactly, but I wouldn't say hostile either. Then there was another presence that just kept identifying himself as he, and the energy around that one felt completely different. Ominous, I guess would be the best way to put it. At one point I remember saying the Anima Christi prayer under my breath, almost out of instinct. I didn't want to provoke anything, but I knew I needed some kind of protection. And that's when I got a warning. Do not make him upset on the app. I thought it was starting to push back. He began coming through more strongly after that. The messages were strange, and I was told to stay out of the woods. I was warned the land was cursed, and there were repeated references to the battery, and more than once the same words came through again and again. By the time I left, I was already feeling quite unnerved. I also felt drained, like someone had pulled the power right out of me. I could barely stay alert on the drive home, and remember having to force myself to blink, which is unusual as I am used to this kind of work. Then the sleepiness hit hard. I started losing depth perception, and I almost wrecked several times. I was driving through dark roads and thick woods, and all that would replay in my head was the warning, stay out of the woods. As soon as I hit Georgetown County, the second I entered an area I knew well, it was like something snapped. My energy returned instantly, my vision felt normal, the so-called fog lifted, and I felt like myself again. The first thing I thought about was Bram, because it honestly felt like something had attached itself to me after I became the one person willing to communicate. So after that, I started digging into the history of the jail, and some things really made me feel uncomfortable. Because Charleston Old City Jail was once associated with Potter's Field, a mass burial ground. There was also the workhouse history, where enslaved people were punished for disobeying or trying to escape. Not to mention how the entities never seemed to call it Charleston. They kept saying settlement. I don't fully understand what happened to me that night, but I know this much. Something followed me back from it. I'm just glad once I got far enough away from it, whatever demonic entity it was, it let me go.
Ever since I was a small child, I have always felt like someone was watching me. Everyone always told me, don't worry about it. Everyone gets that feeling sometimes. I tried my hardest to believe them, but I always felt like I was being watched. As I grew up, the feeling only became worse and worse. I couldn't sleep without having a nightmare. I started seeing things in the corner of my eye. I started getting angry all the time that I started acting erratic and suspicious around everyone. One night, just after I turned 14, I was home alone and I heard a noise at the front of the house. My heart started racing and I ran to the front of the house where I heard the noise. The coffee table had collapsed in on itself, and everything had fallen everywhere around the room. I started picking everything up, and I heard a noise behind me. I got to my feet and turned around, but I saw nothing. But I still had a really unnerving feeling, like I knew I was being watched. After I cleaned up the rest of the mess, and as I was walking out of the lounge room, I collapsed onto my knees and I started coughing. And as I tried to get up so I could go and get some water, I saw a dark, black figure walking towards me. The light started flickering and I began bleeding through my nose. All I could do was watch as this thing walked towards me. My heart started racing and tears started falling down my face. The figure suddenly stopped walking and flew towards me, is the best I can describe it. As it did, it passed through me and then disappeared. I stopped coughing then, and the blood stopped. All I could do was crawl to the sink to get water. I still couldn't stand up. I still sometimes see that figure in the corner of my eye. When I do see it, it never looks right at me, and I never look at it. I'm terrified to acknowledge it. But I know that it is already following me. It's not made any violent attempts on me ever since that time it flew towards me, though. I'm always worried about what might be next.
My mum has an uncle that lives in Arkansas. Once or twice a year, my family makes the 12-hour drive to his house and stays there for about a week. This has been a thing in my household for as long as I can remember. This experience takes place at his house. I'm 20 now, and would have been around 5 to 7 when this happened. That is important, because I can't remember what happened very well. At this point, it's more like I can only remember myself remembering it, if that makes sense. For whatever reason, my mum and I were sleeping on the pull-out sofa bed, and not in any of the 3 spare bedrooms her uncle had. My dad couldn't make it because of work. Anyway, here's when something happens. It's about 4 in the morning, it's very dark in the house and not a single light is on, and I'm laying flat on my back when all of a sudden, I see something slowly move in my field of vision and look down at me. The thing has a decently long neck, a perfectly round head, and a pair of horns protruding from either side of its head. If it was real, it would have been standing to my right. My mum was on my left, so I didn't find comfort in my mum being between me and this thing. For a while, I thought that my eyes had shut down, and somehow I saw this through my eyelids, since I remember seeing a dark silhouette against a slightly less dark background. But as I'm remembering it now, I'm beginning to think that my eyes were open. Now, why would I be lying flat on my back with my eyes open at 4 in the morning? I don't know, especially considering that I sleep on my sides. This is one thing that makes me think it could have been a dream. That's not all, though. If my memory serves, it spoke a simple hello. This is another thing that makes me think this might have been some kind of nightmare. The voice sounded like the voice of Davy Jones in Pirate of the Caribbean, and as a kid I was scared of Davy Jones. Being raised in a Christian household, I was also afraid of the devil. I found my great-uncle's house to be very creepy, due to it being very old people-y and mildly secluded, so there's a chance all these fears merged into a single nightmare. One thing that may cast doubt on it being a nightmare, though, is that I don't remember waking up. Once it slowly left my field of vision, I remember just laying there on my back, with my eyes shut tight, scared to death or move or try to wake up my mum for hours because I was worried that it might still be in the room with us. I remember laying in that same position for so long that it actually started to get really uncomfortable. It's important to note that this was only because of fear and not because of paralysis. I didn't have sleep paralysis often, but I don't remember this experience being like it. That's all I remember. I never had another paranormal experience despite being a believer and finding the paranormal to be immensely interesting. And it's something I wondered about a lot. Maybe some of you can help me understand it better. Was I face to face that night with a demon?
So, it was about 9:24 p.m, and it was very dark. I was watching television when I heard a loud thump from the passageway. Of course, I jumped. I didn't necessarily want to find out what it was. I'm very weird. I get thirsty after eating/drinking things that are not water. So, after finishing my food and hearing that thump, I was very thirsty. I was shaking all over. I opened my bedroom door and the lights in my room suddenly dimmed. It was kind of quiet, even though the TV was pretty loud and I was about 1 meter away from it. I walked out, taking a look around. I was about 2 meters away from my bedroom door when suddenly it slammed shut. I was freaked out. One step further, I felt cold, like someone was watching me. I felt shivers running up my spine. I started running towards the kitchen door. I was about 4 meters from the door when something jumped out in front of me. I was expecting to slam straight into it, but no, I went straight through it. I quickly turned around to see what it was. I saw a shadowy figure with red eyes. They were big eyes, and they kept expanding and then contracting. I felt its cold breath on my face. It was about 2 times taller than I was, and I'm quite tall. I quickly turned around to see where the doorknob was. I turned back while opening the door and it was gone. I've been feeling the same stuff every night, but I haven't seen whatever it was since that night. I never go through that passageway during the night anymore. Not without the passage light on, at least. Does anyone know what the hell this was? Because I'm really scared about what happened. And right now, I'm hearing the thumping as I'm typing this out. I'm in my room, and I'm home alone.
My whole family have seen these shadow creatures in our house for over a decade. They come and go, and they didn't show up until we were in our house for about 5 years. My husband saw them first. Then both of my kids saw a guy that was all black, but wearing what appeared to be a bowler hat and suit, that would just stare at them from the doorway to their room, as well as other shadow creatures, some with eyes and teeth and some without. I thought they were bad dreams, until one night me and my younger son, who was around 10 at the time and is 16 now, saw the child shadow creature standing in the doorway of my room. We both saw it. One moment it was there, and then I blinked and it wasn't. It looked like a child that was made of shadow, but it was standing in 3D in the doorway of my room, with the light from the kitchen behind it. But the light didn't shine on it, and I couldn't see its face. It looked like it was wearing a shirt, maybe. Well, it freaked me out for a second, but I would have just ignored it as a trick of my eyes if my son, who was sitting next to me in bed, didn't jump and start freaking out and crying. I looked over at him, and he was looking towards the doorway. I asked him if he saw a shadow that looked like a kid, and he just nodded. He was too freaked out to answer. We both saw the same thing. So I immediately started praying for protection over us in the house, and we didn't see anything else that night, and we didn't go to sleep either. We had all the lights on too and didn't leave the bed. I told my husband about it the next morning. He had been sleeping in the living room because of his back, and he said that he had been seeing it and other shadows in the house for a while, and he hadn't said anything. I have never seen anything like it before or since. It was around this time that I found out my husband was having hallucinations for decades, and he had never told me. His hallucinations weren't usually shadows. I knew he had strange or supernatural experiences his whole life, but now finding out what's been going on in my house, and my other son had been seeing them too, was upsetting. What was I to do? Everyone else had been freaked out seeing these things, and because I didn't see anything, I was ignoring what they were saying. This experience made me reevaluate my view on mental health and spiritual and paranormal stuff. So I realized some hallucinations can be your brain misfiring, but could also be a demonic attack that multiple people can experience at the same time. I believe what we experienced were demons, and think that they were invited by my kids accidentally watching demonic crap on YouTube. My husband has CPTSD, and was always seeing random people and creatures standing there or running through the house, or whispering things to him that he couldn't understand. He was later diagnosed with schizoaffective bipolar, but that doesn't explain away my experience. This continued for years, and I tried many ways to rid myself of these shadow creatures or demons, by recommitting myself to Jesus, praying for protection and for God's presence in the house, and to kick out the demons in Jesus' name. Listening to Christian worship music throughout the day and the Bible at night, memorizing scripture and using it in prayers or saying it aloud. These worked most of the time, but it wasn't permanent, especially when we kept watching and listening to evil stuff. Eventually it was so bad that we had a Catholic priest bless the home, and then some charismatic preachers did the same thing a week later after my son tried to take his own. He had been seeing and hearing stuff too. They were telling him to unalive himself, but thankfully he's fine now. I feel like the Catholic priest's prayer, Bible readings and blessings throughout the house, especially the beds, really helped. My husband passed away last year, and I've noticed there has been little to no presence in the house since his passing. My husband did say he was a sacrifice for Satanists twice in his life against his will, and he felt like the demons thought that he was theirs. Hey guys, it's Mort here, and thank you so much for listening. I hope you've enjoyed Paranormal Week and tonight's video. I will be back on Tuesday for some hotel stories, and I would like to thank Creepy Oz for joining me in tonight's video. If you enjoyed his work, please follow the link on screen soon or down below to check out his channel. I would like to extend one final thank you to my members and patrons, whose names can be seen on screen, for their continued support and contributions. And if you'd like to join their ranks and get some cool perks, feel free to follow the link down below to find out more. But that's it from me. Stay awesome, guys, and good night.